Oleksandr Usyk retains his WBO World Cruiserweight title with a 12-round unanimous decision over Michael Hunter. I didn't realize until watching this fight and listening to the commentary that Michael Hunter is actually the son of Mike the Bounty Hunter, who was a fringe contender who I remember quite well from the 80s and 90s in the heavyweight division. I remember he had a good win. I think his best win of his career was over Oliver McCall. He won a decision over McCall, but he also fought a bunch of other people, Francois Botha, who else did he fight? Tyrell Biggs and a bag of other people. He was kind of a fringe contender. He never really broke into the upper echelon of the heavyweight division, but he did have some ability. And Michael Hunter is actually his son, a cruiserweight. I have probably seen a couple of Michael Hunter's early fights, because Michael Hunter ain't had many professional fights. Neither has Usyk, to be fair. But I can't really remember too much about them. So this was my first proper look at Michael Hunter in this Usyk fight. And my impression of Hunter was he is very, very awkward. And he uses his awkwardness very effectively. He gave Usyk by far the most problems he's had so far as a professional. He won several early rounds, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but he was outboxing Oleksandr Usyk for long stretches in this fight. As I say, particularly in the first half of the fight, which to me was a surprise because Usyk is a fantastic boxer with sublime skills. But he was in there with a Michael Hunter who was very well prepared, very awkward, very, very crafty. He had long arms. He appeared to be a shade taller than Oleksandr Usyk and appeared to have longer arms. And he was using it to very good effect. He was tactically very good and he was frustrating Oleksandr Usyk in there. Hunter isn't particularly fast with his hands or feet. He's not slow, but he's just kind of average speed. He doesn't really have much punching power there, it seems. His accuracy is, it's okay, but nothing special. It's just his awkwardness, his crafty brain and his awkwardness and his ranginess, which make him difficult to deal with, or at least what made him difficult for Usyk to deal with. So in terms of Usyk's performance, he didn't look as sharp as he's looked in other fights, but perhaps that was down to what Hunter was doing. You know, we can't take anything away from Hunter. Maybe he was maybe he was making Usyk look less sharp by the stuff he was doing in there. Usyk has recently changed trainer. He relieved James Ali Bashir of his services, and he is now with the father of Vasyl Lomachenko, I believe. That's who trains him now. So perhaps there's some type of issue there in terms of transitioning between the two trainers, or perhaps not. I'm just throwing possibilities up in the air here for you guys to deliberate and debate. But yeah, he didn't look quite as sharp as normal. He did look frustrated. But eventually, the longer the fight went on, his power started to come more and more into play. And he was able to impose that power and physical strength on Michael Hunter and gradually break him down. And in the final round, Michael Hunter found himself in pretty serious trouble towards the end of that round. And it was touch and go as to whether the referee was actually going to jump in and stop the fight. But Hunter, I think the referee probably made the right decision by allowing it to go on, because even though Hunter was under fire, he was firing back here and there, and he wasn't completely gone. He was still trying to move his head, and you could see that he was coherent in there. I wouldn't have complained too much if the referee did stop it. In fact, I wouldn't have complained at all. But I don't know, it was borderline, but I can see why the referee allowed it to go on. So I don't think it was a terrible decision to not stop the fight at that point. So it was definitely a tough fight for Oleksandr Usyk, the kind of fight he needed, really. Sometimes fighters can get caught up and carried away with their own hype, and that can actually make them complacent. So they do need a reality check from time to time to bring them back down to earth and motivate them for the next training camp because they want to be better than they were last time around. Hopefully that's what Oleksandr Usyk will get from this fight. Michael Hunter had been out the ring for over a year, I believe. So he must have been ring rusty to some degree. And to produce a performance like this against Usyk, the guy who's being touted as not only the best cruiserweight in the world, but potentially one of the best heavyweights when he eventually steps up. For Hunter to produce that kind of performance and push Usyk that hard after such a long layoff is very, very impressive indeed. What would he have been able to do against Usyk had he been active as Usyk has been? Who knows? Maybe he could have won the fight. We won't know unless that situation actually unfolded. Maybe there'll be a rematch sometime in the future. As far as the scores and the decision in the fight, I wasn't scoring it round by round. I just watched the fight for entertainment, for enjoyment. I wasn't keeping score. But my impression was that it was closer than the judges had it. I think the judges were scoring it 117, 110 or 109 or something like that to Usyk. That on the face of it, without actually scoring it round by round, my gut reaction to that was those are some wide scorecards. I felt like Hunter won plenty of rounds in this fight, particularly in the first half of it. So I'm a bit dubious about those scorecards, but there was no robbery or anything here as far as I'm concerned. But definitely, I have the feeling in my bones that those judges' scorecards were not really on the up and up, in my view anyway. So yeah, a tough fight for Oleksandr Usyk, but the kind of fight I think that he needs. Some people are going to say, well, he got exposed a bit here and he's not as good as people say he is. Look, the greatest fighters of all time have had fights like this. Sugar Ray Leonard had fights where he didn't look particularly great against unheralded opposition. And remember, Michael Hunter was undefeated going into this fight. But as I say, Ray Leonard had difficult times, difficult fights against people who are not particularly well known. Muhammad Ali, before he even won a world title, had difficult fights against unheralded opposition. I mean, you can go all the way down the line, talking about all kind of different guys. Lennox Lewis had a very tough fight with a journeyman called Levi Billups, a guy who had no amateur fights before Lewis won a world title. So, yeah, Usyk had a tough fight against an unbeaten Michael Hunter. It don't mean that Usyk is a fraud or he's not the real deal or anything like that. Styles make fights. Does it mean that there is something for future Usyk opponents to build on or to build a strategy around in terms of hoping to beat Usyk? Yes. People can look at the Hunter fight and say, okay, these are things which work for Hunter. Let me try and do those things against Usyk and build upon them and improve upon them and use that as some type of blueprint to hopefully beat Usyk. Yes, they can do that. But as I say, Usyk will probably improve from this. He'll probably go back to the drawing board and say, you know what? I can't go through that kind of fight again, which is that tough, particularly early on. I need to make the necessary adjustments. And if he's dedicated to the sport the way most top level fighters are, then that's exactly what he'll do. So drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how you felt about Oleksandr Usyk's performance. Does it change your perception of him? Does it change the perception of how you think he would do against the other top cruiserweights out there? Do you think guys like Maris Breedis have got a better chance against him now? Or any of the other cruiserweights out there? Does it change your perception of how you think he might do in the heavyweight division? Drop it all in the comment section below. It's Hatman, I'm out.